Alright, legends, welcome along to Sceam Me Up Botty. I am your host, Rodney Stewart. Yes, it is another episode of a boring podcaster that isn't a very good broadcaster in general. But I am a big science fiction nerd and I love talking about some Star Trek. So let's get into it with Star Trek The Original Series Season 2, Episode 5, The Apple. Not the best episode by any stretch, but I enjoy this one. The Enterprise arrives at a planet, Gamma Trianguli VI, I want to say. I just looked up some notes online here. Roman numeral VA, I believe, is 6. This planet appears to be a tropical paradise with, really rich natural resources. So Captain Kirk leads in a landing party down to check out the planet. McCoy is there, Chekhov is with them, First Officer Spock, and Yeoman Martha Landon, and 4 security personnel there as well. So 4 guys in red shirts, and this episode definitely solidifies that thing of, if you're in Star Trek and you've got a red shirt on, chances are you're going to die. So, yes, that does happen. These security people down here on the planet, they quickly find that the paradise is extremely hostile, losing free of security team to a plant that shoots poisonous thorns, a bizarre lightning storm, and an explosive rock. This all happens very swiftly in the episode. Transporting back to the ship is impossible as an energy field has drawn power from the Enterprise, rendering the transporters inoperable. Kirk orders the team towards a primitive village. They're carefully avoiding hazards along the way. They capture a native of the planet who's been tracking them. The frightened man, Akuta, I think his name is, says that he is the chief of the feeders of Vaal. Small antennae on his head allow him to communicate with Vaal, acting as the entity's eyes and ears. During this conversation, Chief Engineer Scott reports that the Enterprise has slowly been pulled towards the planet by a tractor beam. Kirk, suspecting a connection with Vaal, asks Akuta to take them to it. So this episode, it shows Kirk dealing with a fair piece of guilt in this episode. He's lost 3 people at this point from the team, and all because he wanted to enjoy paradise, essentially. He should have, whenever the first sign of trouble came, he should have evacuated the team back to the Enterprise and regrouped up there, but he didn't, and people have suffered because of his actions. And yes, he is feeling it in this episode. So this creature, Vaal, is essentially, it just looks like a snake's head, and these guys bring stuff to it to charge it up. It's like a machine weapon, whatever you want to call it. These guys are worshipping it and whatnot, and just yes, there's no children, there's men and women there, but they're stuck in time. That'd be a quick way of putting it. But yeah, it is just it's not letting Kirk and the team off the planet, and it's determined to bring the Enterprise down. Akuta leads them to a rock formation with a dragon-like head at the front. I said snake, but dragon, whatever. I think it looked more like a snake. Spock's analysis shows that the entrance is protected by a force field, but appears to lead to an underground complex. Akuta says that Vaal may wish to speak with them later, but in the meantime offers the hospitality of the village. Back in the Enterprise, the crew find the villagers to be young and healthy. not back in the Enterprise. The crew find the villagers young and healthy, like Akuta, but somewhat unsophisticated. The villagers say Vaal prohibits touching, as replacements, meaning children, are not needed. After a while, the villagers are observed feeding Vaal with the explosive minerals from the planet, apparently the fuel that this thing needs. And the landing party conclude that Vaal is a machine which maintains the planet's Eden-like conditions, making the inhabitants virtually immortal and rendering most work unnecessary. So these guys are just wandering about the planet, feeding these rocks to this thing, and taking it easy. And they do make reference to the Garden of Eden in this episode a few times. Spock and McCoy argue over the desirability of this system, but Kirk reminds them that they need to free the Enterprise. In the evening, Chekhov and Landon go to a secluded area and they have a little kiss. And sometimes it's easy to forget that Chekhov was essentially brought in here as the male sex appeal for Star Trek, because he's the bowl haircut and everything looks like one of the Beatles. They were big at the time, so they brought in someone that was a bit like the Beatles. So he's, doing his thing in this episode, and gets a little kiss off this woman Landon, and she is very, very pretty. Well done, Chekhov. A young native couple observe and copy their behaviour. Vaal is instantly aware, and through Akuta orders the natives to kill the strangers in the morning. During their attack, the last security man is killed, but the rest of the crew subdue the villagers and place them in the hut, keeping them prisoner. Landon, in particular, distinguishes herself in the fight using impressive hand-to-hand combat skills to disable 2 villagers. So there you are. People will go on about that new Star Trek being more inclusivity and all this mad nonsense, and been more woke than what the original one ever was. That's the thing. Star Trek always had that, and it always had political messaging in there, but they did it very, very smartly in the original series. Next Generation, DS9, all that sort of stuff. It was worked on the good storytelling, and this woman here in the fight beats off 2 villagers, showing that women can indeed be strong and independent, and it doesn't draw attention to it. The fight's happening, there's multiple people going at each other at the same time. This woman takes 2 people out at once. Wonderful. But again, if that had been new Star Trek, there would have been signposts all around this woman pointing at her. Look what she's doing. Just good storytelling doesn't need to do that nonsense. Scotty reports that an attempt using all available power to free the ship has failed, and Kirk orders his crew to prevent the villagers from feeding Vaal on the planet. Hoping this is going to take power away from Vaal, he instructs Scotty to fire the ship's phasers at the rock formation, and hoping this is going to drain Vaal's remaining power. Vaal is overloaded and the Enterprise is freed from the tractor beam, essentially killing this thing completely. Kirk tells a distraught Akuta that his people will now be able to experience normal life, and you might actually enjoy it, and there's a little bit of sex talk in there, but it's back in the 60s. What year did this come out? I think it's 67. They didn't go too deep into that sort of thing, but they do dance around it ever so slightly, and you guys, you don't know what you're in for. At this point, all you had to do was sleep, eat, take a dump, and feed Vaal this stuff, and that was it. There was nothing else. There was no other enjoyment in your life. There was no touching of the opposite sex. And now that this thing's gone, you're going to be able to start afresh, and you're going to discover what it's like to and do the deed. So there's a little bit of comedy in there towards the end of it. Back on board the ship, Spock suggests that their actions were the equivalent of the fruit of the tree of knowledge in the Bible, driving the villagers out of the Garden of Eden. Kirk, Kirk is in towards Spock at the end of the episode, and he's saying, "If you just compared me to the devil, do I even remotely look like a devil? Is there anybody else in this ship that looks more like Satan than I do, more or less?" And there's a little funny moment where him and McCoy are walking around Spock and they're checking out his ears and whatnot. The thing that jumped out to me there is I remember reading somewhere, and let me just check out the reception that this thing got here in case somebody's actually put that in there. Alright, I don't see it here. This may be something that is true, and maybe I've made it up in my own head. I'm almost 100% sure it's not. Not made up. When the Star Trek first came out, and the original pilot went out, there was a lot of talk about the character of Spock looking like a demon, and even whenever the series started been shown, I believe too, there were some concerns from the Bible Belt about the appearance of Spock and him looking like a devil or looking like Satan and whatnot because of the ears. And I think in this episode here, I think this was not just a joke for the sake of the story, but I think it was perhaps a dig at the public as well for their, assessment of the character of Spock. So to make a joke at Spock's expense in the episode, saying that he looks like a devil, whenever people were trying to criticise the series in real life, saying he looked like a devil, was absolute genius. People can't bring you down if you have that self-deprecating kind of humour. I love using that myself every once in a while. Very, very hard to bring me down. Like the first person that's usually taking the hand out of me is myself. There's very little anybody else can say that will annoy me because I've probably already said it myself. So the episode itself, not fantastic. I'm just going to get into some of the quotes here from reception that I got. Zach Hanlon of the AV Club gave the episode a B- in 2009. He thought the episode didn't quite grapple directly enough of how Kirk's intervention seemed likely to make life much worse for the innocent inhabitants of the planet, who seemingly have no clue how to live without Vaal's protection and guidance. That's kind of a fair point, but in the episode, Kirk's not just he doesn't do what he did with Khan. He just doesn't, drop somebody off on a planet and fuck off and never come back. He does say that the Federation is going to help these people move on. So, B-, fair enough, but I think his opinion was a little off right there. 2009 Games Radar noted this episode in the list of nastiest redshirt deaths for the death of crewman Hendroff by a deadly plant during the mission on the planet's surface. Yeah, this planet shot these things across and stabbed him in the chest. There's a 2015 retrospective by Keith R.A. DeCandido criticised the episode, ranking it 3 out of 10. He wrote that the episode did not sufficiently put its own unique spin on a scenario that had already been exploited several times in the original series, most directly the killer plant-running robot and the return of the Archons. The deaths of 4 security officers in this episode is one of the solidifiers of the redshirt as a literary device wherein some fresh side characters are introduced simply to be promptly killed. So I did sort of say that in my wee review there. Wild famous, the DeCandio also considers this unusually bad writing. This review that I'm reading this off, there's some bad writing there. The scenario seems to be attempting to contrast the apparent idyllic Garden of Eden-like setting with hidden dangers, but the episode reveals that this is no Eden in the intro, leaving there not much tension or surprise in later acts as the planet continues to be hostile. I'm not going to read any more of this here. This guy sounds like he's talking out of his arse, but yes, yeah, I'm not even going to go back near that there. Whoever this guy is, who is he anyway? He's an American science fiction and fantasy writer. You wouldn't think it of the way that he was speaking there. Martial artist, musician. Martial artist and musician who works on comic books, novels, role-playing games and video games, including numerous media tie-in books for properties such as Star Trek, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Doctor Who. So this guy sounds like he knows what he's talking about, but the way this is put out here, yeah, I think do you know the way some people, whenever they're trying to review something, they try to make themselves sound a lot more intellectual than they actually are? Whereas you're listening to this podcast with me and I'm just talking about the episode in a roundabout way of a fan that enjoys the thing. Like, I'm not going to delve too damn deeply into the thing and try and find all these hidden meanings and something that's just like, you know, if I see, you know, if you hear the sound of hoofs coming, running, you don't think zebra. Just go ahead and think of horsey. I think that as a quote from Dr. Cox in Scrubs, you know, because somebody overanalyzes something has to be more than what it actually is. You know, just, you know, if you hear hoofs, the clapping of hoofs coming, don't think zebra, just think horsey. So, yeah, just going to leave it there with that guy. But, not a bad episode. There's something else very interesting here, and I didn't actually catch it until I seen the titles coming up at the end of it. This episode guest stars a young David Soul of Starsky and Hutch fame as one of the feeders of Vaal. I didn't catch him in the episode, but he's there, and yeah, interesting. So next time I watch it, I'm going to keep my eye out for him. Right, I think that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I might have talked a little bit more nonsense than normal with this one, but it is what it is. Star Trek, hard to beat. Right, that's going to do it, guys. I need to get my head down and get some sleep. So whatever you're doing, stay safe, and I will talk to you in the next episode. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.